Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 4 for year 3's maths this week. Today we're going to be looking at bar charts. Now bar charts are just a different way of showing the data that we've been looking at all week. So here's an example. This is a bar chart of children's favourite lessons. Now you can see that it's called a bar chart because the information is shown in these bars. Now what we can see is we've got the lessons English, maths, music and PE. Now, if I was to ask you which lesson was the most popular, what would you say? You'd hopefully say that it was PE, because this is the one that the most children chose. Well, which was the least popular? Well, that would be music, because it's the one that the least amount of children chose. But if I said to you, well, how many people chose PE? Could you tell me? You might have a guess, but actually no, you couldn't, because this bar chart is missing something really quite important. It's missing this on its axis. This tells us what each row or each little layer of squares counts for. So in this case, this stands for one person. We've got then 2 people, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And you can see that it's going up in ones. Now some bar charts do go up in ones like this, but they don't all. You need to be really careful that you look straight away at this axis to see what it's counting up in, and to make sure you're not accidentally making a mistake by thinking it's 1 when really it's counting up in 2s or 5s or maybe even 10s. So now I can say, well, how many children like PE? Now to do this and to answer it, I'm going to look at my PE column, and here it is. Now I like to do this by going up to the top of the PE bar, which is here, and then tracing it along to my numbered axis. Now you can use your finger, you can use a ruler. I'm going to show you with a line here. And I'm going to draw my line from the top of the PE bar to the axis. Aha, and I can see that it's going to number 5. That means that 5 children chose PE as their favourite lesson. I might get questions like this. Well, which subject is liked by 3 children? So instead of finding how many children like the subject, I'm doing it the other way around. So this time I'm going to go to 3. So I'm going to look up my y-axis, which is this one. I'm going to find 3. And I'm then going to go across until I can find the bar that it meets. Well, I can see here that actually it hits bang on the top of English. So English is a subject that was chosen by 3 children. The final question I've got is how many more people liked maths than music? Now, all this week, we keep seeing this how many more thing pop up. Can you remember what it means? It wants us to find the difference. So to do this, we need to know how many people liked maths and how many people liked music. So I'm going to again draw on my bar chart because I find it much easier to read if I draw it. So here we've got maths. So I'm going to find maths. Here it is. I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to trace my finger along to the axis. See that maths was liked by 4 people. And I'll jot a little 4 down here so I can remember. I then want to have a look at music. So here's my music bar. I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to trace it across my finger to see that 2 people chose music. And again, I'll jot it down so I remember. So how many more people liked maths than music? So what's the difference? How many more to get from 2 to 4? And that's a difference of 2. So 2 more people liked maths than liked music. Here's another bar chart. So first thing I want you to do is to have a look at it. Can you see the scale on this y-axis here? Now the y-axis is the one that goes up and the x-axis is the one that goes across because x is across. Now, do you remember on that last slide I said to be very careful what it's counting up in? Can you see that actually this is counting up not in 1s, but in 2s? It's going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Now, does that mean that I can't show 1 child or 3 children? It doesn't mean that at all. If I want to show 1, that would be halfway between 0 and 2. If I wanted to show 3, that would be halfway between 2 and 4. This would be 5. This would be 7, this would be 9, this would be 11. So I can still show odd numbers, that's absolutely fine. Just need to be very careful making sure where they're pointing to. I'd like you to pause the video and see if you can answer these 4 questions about this bar chart. Then we'll come back together and we'll see if you manage to get them right. Okay, let's see how we've got on. So the first question said, how many children liked hockey? So I'm going to find hockey. Here's my bar for hockey. And I'm going to trace my finger across. And I can see that the children who liked hockey were 4 children. Well done if you got 4. The next question was how many children like tennis? Here's my tennis bar. I'm going to put my finger on it and trace it across. Now it's not pointing to a number, is it? It's pointing to halfway between 6 and 8, which means that tennis was chosen by 7 people. Well done if you got that one right, because that is quite tricky. The next one, how many fewer, remember fewer means less, how many fewer children liked rugby than football? So again, I'm going to find rugby. I'm going to trace my finger across. And it's in between the 4 and the 6. Well, what number is it going to be on if it's halfway between 4 and 6? It's going to be 5. So I'll jot a little 5 in here to remind me while I'm working out my other one. So how many children, fewer children liked rugby than football? So let's count our football bar. Here's the top, trace it across, 12. So I've got 12 children like football, 5 children that liked rugby. So it's asking me to find the difference between 12 and 5. So 12 take away 5, or from 5 counting up to 12, whichever method you find easier. Well, 12 take away 5 gives me 7. There are 7 fewer children who like rugby than football. And I could actually see that on this bar. Can you see? If I counted, I know this is 2, 4, 6, and then 7. And you can see the difference between the tops of the 2 bars. The final question was how many children were asked for their favourite sport? Well, to do that, you need to know how many children were in each category. We've just worked out that there were 12 who chose football. We've said that hockey was 4 children, rugby was 5, and tennis was 7. It's asking you to find the total altogether of how many there were. So it's up to you how you work this out. You might say that you're going to add the 2 together and then add these 2 together and find the total, or you might add as you go along. Well, 12 add 14 gives me a total of 16. I could then do 16 add 5 gives me a new total of 21. And 21 add 7 gives me a total of 28. So altogether they asked 28 children. Okay, here's another bar chart. Now this bar chart is alongside a pictogram like the ones we were looking at yesterday. And you can see here that the pictogram key shows that a square is worth 10 visitors. And actually that matches my bar chart because if I look at my y-axis, I can see that it's counting up in tens. I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So I'd like you to pause the video, see if you can answer these 3 questions using the pictogram and the bar chart. Okay, so the first question was how many people visited on Sunday? So I need to start by looking at my Sunday column. Here it is. I'm going to trace it up and I'm going to use my finger or a ruler, whichever you've got to hand, to go across to the y-axis. Just be really careful if you're using your finger that your finger doesn't go wobbly and go too far. So it is good to have a ruler if you've got one. Now I can see it as a line in between 30 and 40. So just like in that last bar chart, I need to know what's halfway between 30 and 40. And that is the number 35. So 35 people visited on Sunday. Now I can check that on my pictogram, sorry. I know this is worth 10, this is worth 10, and this is worth 10. I know that actually half a square is equal to half of 10, which is 5. So you can see I've got my same total of 35. The second question then was how many more, again that really key vocab that keeps coming up again and again, how many more people visited on Saturday than on Friday? Well, I need to know how many people visited on Saturday. So here's my Saturday bar. I can trace it up to find that the answer is 50. 50 people visited on Saturday. How many people visited on Friday? So again, here's Friday. We'll trace it across and we can see that 30 people visited on Friday. So if I'm finding how many more, again, I'm finding that difference, the gap between 30 and 50. Well, if I know that the gap between 3 and 5 is 2, I know the gap between 30 and 50 is going to be 20. And our final question, on which day did 25 people visit? So again, I'm not looking at the days of the week to start off with. I'm going to have to look at the numbers on my axes and then go from there. So I'm looking up, here's 0, 10, 20, 30. I'm looking for 25. 25 is going to be halfway between 20 and 30. So again, I can use a ruler to draw a line. Now I'm looking for the bar that matches. Well, I can see that Thursday does go to 25, Friday is higher, Saturday is higher, and Sunday is higher. So the day on which 25 people visited had to be Thursday. Well done if you got those ones correct. Here's an example of another bar chart. Now this one looks a little bit different because it's tipped on its side. And rather than going up and down, the bars are going across, but it still works in exactly the same way. In this one, you've got two different bar charts. One that shows the points scored in tennis matches by some children, and the other one shows points scored in basketball matches by some children. Now you've got the same children in both bar charts. We've got Amir, Annie, Eva, and Jack. Now Eva says, I scored the same number of points at tennis and basketball because my bars are the same size. So I want you to have a little think, is Eva right or is she wrong? And how do you know if she's right or if she's wrong? So have a little think to yourself. What do you think? Now it might be quite easy to say, well, yeah, if Eva's bars are the same size, then yeah, she would have the same points. But remember what I said at that very, very first slide that we looked at. The first thing that you must always look at in a bar chart is what the axis is going up in. If we look at our tennis matches, it's going up in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It's going up in tens. But look at the basketball matches, it's going up in 4, 8, 12, 16. It's going up in 4s. So the fact that these axes are different means that actually the bars being the same size doesn't matter. Let's have a look at Eva and her tennis matches. So this time I can find Eva. I'm going to go down and see how many points she scored in her tennis matches. Well, it's halfway between 40 and 50. Well, that means that Eva scored 45 points in her tennis matches. Let's have a look at her basketball matches. Again, I trace to the end of the bar and I'm going to come down. And I can see that it's part way between 16 and 20. Well, what is halfway between 16 and 20? That is 18. So she scored 18 points in her basketball match and 45 points in her tennis match. So even though those bars were the same size, she didn't score the same number of points. And that's why it's always so important to look at the axis so you know what the different amounts on the bars are worth. So here's those two bar charts again. This time I've got two questions for you to have a little go at. So pause the video, answer your two questions, and then we'll see how you've got on. Okie dokie. So the first question was, who scored the same number of points in both sports? Now we already know that it can't be Eva because we've worked out that Eva wasn't quite right. But we can have a look at the other children. So we can have a look first of all with Amir. Now Amir, if we go to the end of his bar chart and down, Amir scored 50 points in his tennis match. Let's have a look at his basketball matches. We'll go to the end and come down and we can see that that's sitting on 8. So it can't be Amir because he's not got the same number of points in his tennis matches and his basketball matches. Let's have a look at Annie. So in tennis, let's go to the end and scroll down. Halfway between 30 and 40 means that Annie must have scored 35 points in her tennis matches. Let's have a look at her basketball matches. She scored 24 points. So it's not Annie. We've already said we know it can't be either. Let's have a look at Jack. In tennis, Jack scored 10 points. And in basketball, we can see that here we go, half between 8 and 12 is also 10. So the person who scored the same number of points in both sports was Jack. Now that might have tricked you if you weren't listening, like we said on the last slide, to what the scale's going up in, because actually these bars look totally different sizes, but they're worth the same because the axis is going up in different amounts. And then a final question was, how many more points did Annie score in tennis than in basketball? Again, that how many more, trying to find the difference. Well, for Annie in basketball, she scored 35 points. And in tennis, she scored 24. So we need to find out the difference between our 35 and our 24. We're going to subtract them or count up to find the difference. To count up to find the difference, what do I add to 24 to get to 30? Well, that would be 6. To get from 30 to 35 is a jump of 5. 6 add 5 gives me a total of 11. So Annie scored 11 more points in her tennis matches than she did in her basketball matches.